What does justice look like? Does it look like this? Good Lord, no. That looks more like Jabba the Hutt's deadbeat son, according to Seth Meyers. Or to quote John Fugelsang in his appearance on The Stephanie Miller Show, it looks like if gout caught gout. So then, what about this? Yes, that's more along the lines of what justice looks like. Steve Bannon is indeed going to jail. Another flagship member of the Trump chain gang is soon to report to prison. And today, incredible news about Steve Bannon going to prison. And we are going to unpack the details of what's in store for the Breitbart blowhard. But first, let's just quickly review why Bannon is facing jail time. Bannon joined the 2016 Trump campaign and orchestrated a lot of its themes. As one of the co-founders of Breitbart News, Bannon is an expert on playing up to white rage. And that was his fundamental role in both the campaign and as a Trump advisor. Bannon helped make sure that the Trump administration did nothing but create chaos. What Bannon knew from his days of creating garbage content is that the more chaos you sow, the more you have the mainstream media chasing its tail trying to keep up. And then the easier it is to keep the con game running. And to no one's surprise, there were a lot of cons being run out of the Trump White House, not to mention just good old-fashioned corruption. And being so close to the action, Bannon took the opportunity to run his own con game, bilking MAGA Nation out of millions of dollars to build Trump's famous border wall. But being an expert on both chaos and con games, Bannon got in on the biggest con job of them all, the 2020 stolen election, complete with slates of fake electors and a collection of some of the most staggeringly untalented lawyers in the country, who went around the country filing over 60 lawsuits, none of which had any evidence. As it turns out, the lawsuits didn't need any evidence because they were all just part of a con job that congressional Republicans could use to invalidate an election and overthrow the government. And when the insurrection part of that plan started being investigated, Big Bad Bannon, the man behind all the bravado, hid behind legal maneuvering and failed to answer a congressional subpoena, all the while whining, "Executive privilege! Executive privilege!" Well, the wheels of justice turned slowly, but they eventually caught up to Steve Bannon. Held in contempt of Congress in October of 2021, Bannon was ordered on June 6, 2024, to report to jail on July 1st. But late yesterday, breaking news with blistering ramifications for Steve Bannon. For all of you who are sick of privileged white guys decrying a two-tier justice system because they got caught, yesterday's news makes justice look like this. As many of you know, privileged white guys convicted of white-collar crimes serve their time in minimum security prisons, free from the violence, overcrowding, and victimization of the privatized prison system that poor people and people of color are sent to. Bannon was certain that he would end up in a club-fed prison somewhere, but late yesterday, CNN broke the news that Bannon will have to report to the federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut. And while it's still not a maximum security prison, CNN reports that while the prison houses a large number of white-collar criminals, the facility is not a white-collar crimes-only prison. It can also house violent and sex offenders in its men's population. The ironies abound in Bannon going to FCI Danbury. First, rather than the standard chain link fence around a Club Fed style prison, Danbury has a large, solid barrier, referred to as, wait for it, the wall. Danbury has been the destination of a couple of famous people, including Robert Henry Best, who served most of his life sentence there after being convicted of treason in 1948 for making propaganda broadcasts for the Nazis during World War II. But the biggest irony of Bannon going to FCI Danbury is the reason he has to go. In August of 2020, Bannon was arrested on federal charges of conspiracy to commit mail fraud and money laundering in connection with the We Build the Wall fundraising campaign. Now, as part of the con to build Trump's wall, Bannon promised that all contributions would go to building a U.S.-Mexico border wall. But of course, Bannon could not resist pillaging the money for himself. I mean, seriously, that was the whole purpose of the campaign right from the start. Bannon was so egregious in this con game that even the DOJ under Trump busted him. But on January 20th, 2021, on his last day in office, fellow con man and now convicted felon, Donald Trump pardoned Bannon, getting him off the hook and sparing him both a trial and certain jail time. And as a result, the feds can't touch him because of double jeopardy. Enter the state of New York. In September of 2022, Bannon was charged in New York State Court on counts of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy in connection with the We Build the Wall campaign because much of that fraud occurred in New York. And this is where Bannon starts shaking in his boots. Bannon has to go to FCI Danbury because he has an upcoming criminal trial elsewhere, in New York. And because he has to attend trial while in custody, Bannon will have to be transferred to another prison, New York's Rikers Island, which is a maximum security prison. Now we are finally starting to see what justice looks like. The tough-talking Bannon who gives voice to white outrage and helped in planning to overthrow the government is going to have to share space with the underprivileged and the criminal class of New York. And why shouldn't he? He is, in every definition of the word, a criminal. And as the cases pile up, his privileges within the system gets chipped away. Not to worry, Steve. I'm sure all those people of color at Rikers are just waiting for you to explain to them how the system is out to get you and Donald Trump because you are fighting for them. And in the meantime, remember that while at FCI Danbury, the rules clearly state that all beds are to be made daily in the prescribed manner. If a cell or room is not acceptable, disciplinary action may be taken. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.